I think that would be totally awesome.
That would be pretty sweet to see. A little bit of a throwback for their new setting there in Carolina.
Oh,
And to
exactly. Those jerseys is just they're just so sick. Because originally, back in the day, Hartford and Boston, they were in the same division, obviously, so they actually face each other a lot in the playoffs. It would be totally cool if I saw that. But then again, Carolina has these all black and red jerseys that they wear at home. It has two little flags on it. You look on it, apparently it says North Carolina. Either way, that jersey's just as cool. But again, stop talking about jerseys. The one more thing I wanted to talk about is moving on to the Bruins and the Columbus Blue Jackets.
well, hey, before you get started, the name of that pig, Hamilton.
Hamilton. Oh, that's right, because there's Dougie Hamilton, the defenseman for the Carolina Hurricanes. Okay, that makes sense. I get that.
So it's Hamilton, the lucky pig. And I got to tell you,
All
I just
right.
looked up his picture, and he's not the best looking pig, but hey, it's what's on the inside that counts, I guess.
Hey, I think he's cute. I think he's a cute little pig. I think he's adorable.
He's not
He got
that
a little
little.
T-shirt
He's
and everything.
filling up a whole wagon.
Yeah. I'm sure that must be a pain to be dragging a pig around.
Oh man, pig's a little prima donna, too famous to walk. But let's move it on with the East.
Yeah, let's go.
Boston Bruins, the Columbus Blue Jackets.
So, back to that, what we were just talking about with that other series is that, too much time off in between games can be a huge disadvantage, with Columbus sweeping Tampa Bay in that first round. And like I said, every team that is swept against a team that hasn't swept the next round, they don't make it. And we just saw it in the game that we were just talking about, in the series that we were talking about, and including this one. For those of you who don't know, Boston beat the Columbus Blue Jackets on Monday, winning the series 4-2. It was a back and forth game. Both goalies were on point, but eventually one had to give up one or two goals, and it unfortunately had to be Sergei Bobrovsky. And then it kind of got a little rough at the end with a couple dirty hits. And as soon as I'm done talking about this, we'll talk about the fans and the refereeing and the player safety. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because apparently Charlie McAvoy, the defenseman for the Boston Bruins, hit Anderson kind of high. Now, it was some hockey players will say it's a hockey player's play, and he was just playing the body because he was near the puck. But after watching it time and time again, it looked like McAvoy's shoulder made contact with Anderson's head, and it just didn't look good. And the fans kind of went up in the uproar, and apparently it should have been a major penalty, but apparently it wasn't. But either way, the game was already done. We're going to have to move on from this, and it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's sad to see. I think this is the second or third time this playoffs that either a hit that was called wrong or something that was uncalled has come back to kind of bite a team in the ass. So
yeah, and it's really unfortunate. It only happens to really great hockey players that make a difference in this game. And just I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if I'm being too. Am I over criticizing them? I really don't know, because like I said, there's been times where I think the refs have made the right call, and then I've seen times where in this playoffs where I haven't. And then even when it hasn't gone the right way, the NHL player safety will do a fine or a suspension, but they've been all over the place. It feels like they'll watch a couple, risky plays, and then they kind of like avoid the others. And I don't know how to make that a more consistent thing to make sure that the game is played fairly and safely.
Well, do you see the NHL kind of adopting somewhat of the NFL policies with now, the NFL is able to review pass interference calls and missed pass interference calls? Do you see the NHL kind of coming up and being like, okay, this was a penalty. We don't know if it was a major, minor. Let's take to the video booth and see.
So they do go to review for some things. Now, as you don't know, in the NHL, you can challenge plays, but you can only challenge certain plays. So, like, let's say your guy scores, but upon entering the zone, you might have been offside. They can review that. You can also review goaltender interference. Now you can review that, and they could totally change the outcome of the game. And we've seen that several times in this playoffs. But what's been unfortunate about that is that they've been so, up and down with it. There was one game in the Western Conference where Marc-Andre Fleury got run into from the Vegas Golden Knights, but they counted it a goal. But then the very next night, I saw it in another game with another goalie, and they totally said it was fine.
So the NHL refs are just not all that consistent.
I don't. That's the thing. I don't know what to blame them. Like, there's, they go through, challenges, and they get studied, they get tests, just like any other ref in any other league. I think it's just that now that it's the playoffs, and now that there's a lot on the line, and we're winning to win the whole championship. That's what I'm saying. I'm wondering if I'm over criticizing this, because it's only now that people are on an uproar when it's win or go home. I guarantee you this probably happened plenty of times in the regular season, but I didn't have enough time to really care. I mean, not care about it, but I was like, oh, well, I think that should have been a call, but maybe I was wrong. But now that it's, win or go home, Game 7, your whole season's on the line, and there's so much more on the line that I feel like I might be over criticizing him. Is that wrong?
No, I don't think it's wrong. I think we saw the same thing with like I said, and I'm bringing up the NFL again, with the Saints. That missed pass interference call.
Oh, yeah. It
ruined their season. It ended their season. And this kind of seems like something. Obviously, I don't necessarily know if this would have changed the outcome for the Columbus Blue Jackets, but I understand the fans thinking that something more should have been done. So yeah. That's where I kind of am curious. Will the NHL add that kind of penalty into being reviewable?
I think they do. I know there's definitely times when there's a lot of commotion, or if there's a big brawl. Usually the refs all meet together and meet with one each other, and they're like, all right, well, I got 2 minutes on this guy for this. I have a 5-minute penalty for this guy on that. But I don't think they're allowed to use video replay or anything on that. Or if they do, I mean, I don't know how that works, because every arena has a giant, screen, above the rink. And you see players and refs look up and see, what they did wrong. And, the teams also advance on the bench. They have tablets so they can review plays. They can review everything. So I'm assuming there has to be some changes. I mean, especially for more not just making the right calls, but also making sure that each player is safe. And, because the last thing you want to see is another thing like what happened to Joel Pavelski.
Oh, absolutely. We want to make sure they're watching out for the player's safety, but also being fair with the calls. I don't think it would be a bad idea. I think that, it would definitely benefit the teams. The teams feel like they're being wronged. And if it's one of those things, if after they video review it, it's one way or the other. They still got to make the call. But the only downside is I see the fans getting a little upset at that point about the game of play, or the rate of play. Is it going to slow the game down and this and that? I know we see it in the MLB with calls being challenged and replayed. The MLB baseball's already a slow sport, and you add in video reviews and it makes it even slower.
Yeah, no, you're totally right there. But I think if you're a diehard fan of the sport, I think you would understand it. I can understand. I compare goalie interference with hockey and pass interference with football to be kind of around the same thing. It's a very touchy subject. There's a lot of details that go into that rule or to those rules. And, you could watch one play this way and be like, oh, that's interference. Or you look another one the next day and it could be totally different. So I guess as a fan of all those sports, I would like to see it. I know it's already hard for baseball, though, because it already is. People consider it slow. And it can be at times. But the thing is, if it's my team, I want to make sure they know it's right. Especially when it's playoffs, regardless of the sport.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all for holding referees accountable. And if that means that every play needs to be reviewed, so be it.
Yeah. Especially that with the NFL with the Saints, man. I don't know who you are. I don't know what they were seeing, but man, if that's not pass interference, I don't know what is.
And I think a comparison I saw today kind of related that to the hit from the Bruins game last night. Had the referee been in a different position and seen it from a different angle, he might have made the call completely differently. But can't go back in time, and unless you have that video review, you're not going to be able to make that call.
Yeah, it is what it is. They've tried to get comment from Gary Bettman, obviously who was president of the NHL. He still says no comment. He says that we're trying to working on to making the game better and safer and so on and so forth. But there's a lot that I think they need to work on. Of course, every year, just like with the other major sports, they have it's not a managers meeting, but it's like a I don't know. They have like a owners and managers getaway where they talk about what they can do to make the sport better for the fans as well as the players. I know they do that every year. So I'm sure after this playoff, they'll definitely be talking about reviews and probably see more reviews in the future.
Yeah. I agree, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, no. I think it should be totally a part of it. And then also with the fans, there's something I need to address because I'm personally upset about it. Is that we know that I'm a diehard fan. We know that I was raised in New England. I love watching my Bruins, my Pats, the Celtics. I grew up there, and I'm especially I grew up playing hockey, and I'm a diehard fan. And I've seen my team win, and I've seen my team lose. But I'll tell you what, I will never threaten or say something terrible via Twitter and send them something dirty. And apparently that's getting more and more out of hand, especially in the NHL. I'm sure other sports have to deal with that. But it goes back to the refs and the hitting. So last series between Boston and Toronto, I know I keep talking about them, but I'm just using them as an example. Jake DeBrusk made some dirty hits. He didn't get suspended. And then Kadari from Toronto got suspended for the rest of the first round. And so a lot of people were pissed off, and they are really upset that, it wasn't technically called evenly because Jake was fine and then Kadari got suspended for the rest of the series. And it got so bad that the fans on multiple different social medias were actually threatening to kill him and his family via social media. And that's not okay, man. That's not okay for any sport, for anyone, regardless.
Yeah, that's crossing a line.
I understand your team lost. I know how it feels when my team loses, and I feel like they got screwed over. I get that. I understand that. It hurts. It sucks. But it's part of being a fan. You win some, you lose some. And if you can't take it losing, you don't deserve it taking it when your team wins. That's just completely rude. It's completely unacceptable. Oh yeah.
And it's one thing to be sitting around watching the game and something happens, and in the heat of the moment, you say, to the buddies you're watching with, I'd want to fuck that guy up. Something along those lines. But to take to social media You've obviously put thought into it.
Yeah, like
That's not
you,
okay.